We know that foldable devices always command a flagship price point. We're talking about obviously features that are not available on every device. The ability of turning into it from a large display to a clamshell, or even a tablet to a smaller display, have always cost a little more to produce and of course to sell. Well, earlier this year, Motorola released or actually announced two devices. The Razr Plus, which is the one I have on the right side, beautiful, gorgeous, large display on the outside, large display on the inside, and of course featuring a lot of really cool technologies. But at the same time we saw, which we haven't had access to yet, was the Razr, the standard Razr of 2023, that was trying to give us some of the main features from the Razr Plus, but at a more price point that we can afford. So a more budget-friendly version of the Razr Plus, but not skimping too much on the features. So in today's video, we're going to review the Razr 2023 edition. Let's check it out and see what makes this unique device so special. Like and subscribe and make sure you hit that bell icon so that you're always notified to whenever we have new videos on the channel. So this is it. This is the Razr of 2023. First thing you'll notice obviously is that gapless experience. So there is no gap between the displays, and that's one of the things they carried over. The hinge mechanism that we have is also a very sturdy hinge mechanism. You can actually put it in more of a tent mode if you want to be able to use it that way. Again, you can use the front-facing cameras to be able to use that functionality. You can also use this as a viewfinder in case you want to be able to take selfies of yourself, so you don't actually have to open up the device to be able to take pictures. And by just double pressing the power button, you're actually greeted directly with the camera. So you have the portrait, video, and of course standard photo images. And you can actually see in there, and you can definitely change. Now, one of the really nice things about it here is I tap this, it's going to snap a picture. But what I also like about it is I'm also able to basically go into the ultra wide. So ultra wide standard lens, since we have two, the 64 megapixel camera is going to be the primary sensor, and the 13 megapixel camera is going to be the ultra wide on the outside. Now on the inside, you notice that there's that little LED there telling us that we were using it. Now on the inside, we're greeted with a 6.9 inch display. Now this one is a full HD plus display that runs at 144 Hertz refresh rate. And that's one of the things I really like about this. They carried over the 144 Hertz from the big guy over to this version of it. And that gives us the ability of enjoying the stereo speakers that we have in here as well. And of course, a 32 megapixel camera on the inside. That's going to give us as well 4K. One thing to mention, we get 4K 30 frames per second from all of the sensors. So all two sensors on the outside and the additional sensor on the inside. Fingerprint sensor is positioned as to be basically as the power button, volume rocker as well. We have one of the microphones, tilting it at the top, an additional microphone. On the bottom, we have a USB-C microphone, of course, as well as the ability of using that bottom firing speaker. On the right side, we pretty much have just the SIM tray open here. We're able to use a single SIM and an eSIM, so in case you want to travel, it's going to work perfectly for you guys. But one of the big things about it is the fact that this device closes up and it actually makes it much more smaller and functional. The display on the outside is not that small, but essentially it's a 1.5 inch display. It's a color display and it is interactive. You're able to basically go through. You have the ability to contact, checking in media player, weather in case you want to be able to check that out. You can just check there. And of course, starting a timer in there and going back to the main screen. If you have notifications, you can actually swipe up. You can notice it from there. And if you don't have any additional notification, you can just swipe that away. Swiping up from the top, we also have access to some of the shortcuts in here, so you're able to turn on airplane mode, flashlight. So it's not really skimping on any of the information. Do not disturb, of course, hotspot if you want to turn that on. And of course, the ability of launching the camera by just double pressing the power button, and that gets you into the camera app. One of the things that if you want to also be able to do that showed you guys that you probably know from Motorola is the shake. And that turns on the actual the flashlight in here, and the ability of also doing the double take to be able to turn on the camera, and then the ability of accessing all of that information. So a lot of functional shortcuts that you probably did not know, but it is definitely there. There's a few options as far as the color. The purple one for me looked really, really nice. And one of the things about that is it has that nice vegan leather, the fake leather material that they have on the back. And of course, the Razr, the Motorola logo, the hinge, everything looks absolutely fantastic. From a design standpoint, this is definitely one of their best designs, mimicking what we saw with the big guy. And of course, although it's a smaller display on the outside, it does not skimp on features. Now, you may be wondering about the crease and how visible it is. It actually is very minimally visible. Let me see if I can get any kind of reflection right there. You can definitely see where it is. It is definitely minimal. It's one of those things that they carried very, very nicely. It does carry over. You barely feel it when you're going over it. Of course, it's going to give us the ability of using the device in multiple angles, using the camera app in different situations. So let's go ahead and tilt it over. You notice there's the mechanism here. It changes where the viewfinder stays in the front. All the controls changes to the right, and of course goes back to normal. So all of those things automatic, works very good. And there's some specific functional options that if you go into the settings tab directly under the cover display, And they call this section the external display. You have the ability of changing different clock faces. These are the preloaded ones. You're able to customize them, change them. The panels themselves, those are the options that we were scrolling through. You're able to customize them, turn them on, turn them off, depending on the ones that you want. Notifications, you're also able to turn on that come functional, and the ability of seeing different options, app settings, and all of that options that we got in there. Call settings, and of course, Razr tips to be able to customize that experience. All the other options is that we have here, the wallpaper, sound notification, gestures, battery information. The storage that I have on this device is 128 gigs of internal storage. I have 8 gigs of RAM. That's similar to what we saw before, although the bigger version of this actually does carry more storage on there. Of course, we have access to Google Play services, applications, system updates, all the things that you expect directly from Motorola. Everything is built in here. And there's still the Moto app if you want to be able to go in there, customize certain options, learn about some of the functionalities that they have, the Razr tips, the display, the Moto Secure, and of course, Play. All of those options are available. Again, you can customize them. And we have that iconic Motorola, obviously the weather launch information here. You can click that and launch it over. And of course, you get all the information that you want for the area that you're in. So it's basically going to check the weather and get everything for you. Google Play Store, all of the stuff that you want. So the last thing I do want to talk about is the fact that this is carrying a 4200 milliampere battery, and it is going to have 30-watt charging capabilities, not included in the box. Unfortunately, you do need to pick up your own charger, but it does support also wireless 5-watt charging. So you want to put this on a wireless charger, it's not going to be a problem. You'll be able to get it charged up. Although obviously the faster charging is going to be on the 30-watt charging built in here to charge up that 4200 milliampere. A lot of things to talk about, a lot of cool features to talk about, but let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the camera and the functional options that we have within this foldable device. Now, one thing to mention to you guys is that the cameras that we have in here, again, are primarily just 2 cameras on the outside. So there's the 1X, the 0.5, and the macro. The 0.5 and the macro are pretty much sharing the same sensor. It's just essentially a ultra-wide used, stabilized ultra-wide to be able to get us the ability of getting closer and getting those macro shots that we want. And of course, the primary sensor. The 64 megapixel sensor is the main sensor that we have in here. Now, all of these sensors are going to give us 4K 30 frames per second, and that's going to be primarily the limitation of the 7 Gen 1. Okay, so I wanted to stop the video a little bit to just kind of talk to you guys about some of the main features. This is a rear-facing camera video, 4K 30 frames per second, and we're recording it to try to give you guys a good perspective of how the cameras perform. I'm going to do a little bit of a panoramic shot here as well for you guys for the background. But one of the biggest things I'll have to say, although this is a mid-ranger type of a device, the 7 Gen 1 is not going to be the most powerful processor we're able to have ready for, wireless ready for, the ability of casting my display, as I'm showing you guys right now, directly into a display or a TV. And that gives you the ability of enjoying content from your device without having to have the device connected directly. Again, at this price point and with the features that we have here, it's hard not to consider this device. It's not going to give us the best images, the best video, but again, this is a budget version, and it's really more appealing to the more of the flip side. So if you're looking for a clamshell type of a device that provides you some of the main unique features that Motorola can give us, this is not going to be disappointing. Just make sure you set your expectation to where this device is landing. Now, one thing to mention to you guys before we get into the cameras, obviously, is the performance that we have in here is powered by the Qualcomm Snapdragon 7 Gen 1. This is going to give us, obviously, the Geekbench score purely for reference, 1049 and 2896 for the multi-core. Android 13 is running this, 8 gigs of RAM, 128 gigs of internal storage, and as I mentioned to you guys, some great optics to actually start talking about as well. I have traveled with this. I've used this here in the US, and I've also used this in Singapore. I've traveled with it all the way to Singapore. We're going to get a chance to take a look at some of those pictures and videos that I've taken with this device. But overall, the camera app is pretty much straightforward, similar to what we've seen before from Motorola. 4K 30 is available from all of the lenses, the 32 on the front, the 64 on the back, as well as the 13. And of course, we have video, photo, slow motion, and of course, portrait. Pro mode, the ability of going a little bit more control onto this, of course. And as far as under the Pro, let's go ahead and go back, the additional ones here. We have spot color, of course, night video, panorama ultra, which allows us to use a full readout of the 64 megapixel camera sensor on the back, scanning documents, dual camera, photo booth, time lapse, of course, and then of course, dual capture. That gives us the ability of being a little bit more creative. The one thing I also want to mention to you guys is one of the really nice things about it is, there's that little button that we have at the top. If I turn this function on here, especially if you're taking pictures with any kids, and we could definitely see some of those little cartoons that they have in here. It turns on a little bit more when it's being used. Unfortunately, it doesn't work well for some reason whenever you tilt it up. But the configuration that we're getting here allows us to actually make it a little bit easier for kids specifically to know where to look so that you can take the best images. So a lot of people typically don't see that. The display is very nice and very functional. Again, you could use it to be able to see yourself if you want to be able to take videos of yourself. So overall, a well-balanced experience. And we're going to take a look at some of those images again and videos a little bit on the outro part after we check out the gaming experience. But of course, before we jump into the gaming experience, let's go ahead and talk about, obviously, the stereo speakers. So we'll go ahead and go volume 100%. This is our favorite song, Jumbo by NCS Release. If I'm not mistaken, it's around 56 seconds. Let's go ahead and play some great music.
Jack it up.
Now, most of the sound is coming from the bottom fire speaker, and it is firing away. And of course, you're getting some of that audio as well from the top. Experience sounds really good when you're holding it in the hand, and it feels really nice as far as the experience because it's pushing the audio straight into your hand and it bounces off and it comes back to you. You're able to obviously listen to music in the open configuration or in the closed configuration. Let's go ahead and bring it in. I can pause, play back the track, and of course skip track if I want to, and of course the volume control stays up for us. That one thing I do want to mention is that when you close the device, volume down becomes volume up because that's the orientation of your phone, and you can be able to kind of skip the track, go forward, do everything that you want, and also the cover art transfers very nicely. And you can still swipe back and go back to the main screen and enjoy your content. Now, launching into the game launcher, this is going to be pretty straightforward. We do have that nice little side launcher. This is something that we've seen before. Let's go ahead and let it align. Of course, we have block calls, notification, high performance turns on, of course, to give us the full power of the device. And of course, games, settings, freeform, touchscreen, share, acoustic light if you want to be able to turn that on, screenshot, as well as screen record. And then there's locked mode in case you don't want to accidentally get out of the game by accident. It is initializing the library real quick and just building it up, but it's very nice and very straightforward. A large 6.9-inch display providing us some of the best experiences.
Enemy in sight! Predator missile on standby. Hardpoint locked down.
So one of the things to keep in mind with this device is that we have the 7th Gen 1 with 8 gigs of RAM and 128 gigs of internal storage. So the overall experience is pretty much geared to give you a mid-range experience, but still providing us some of those clamshell experiences that we get with a foldable device. So the overall performance as far as gaming is not going to disappoint. We have a high refresh rate display. The 7th Gen 1 is more than capable of playing almost all of the most recent AAA titles on the market. The settings may have to be settled a little bit down, but that's just something to keep in mind with what you're getting. Now, as far as the performance on the cameras that we have in here, I'm going to share with you guys some content again here from LA all the way to Singapore. The cameras on here are not going to disappoint, but they're not going to be the best cameras on the market. And I'm trying to frame it in a way to kind of explain it the best. I'm hoping the images can prove to you guys the type of quality you're able to expect in either the regular lighting or even low light. And of course, using it in good lighting, that's going to give you the best experience. 4K 30 is pretty much the capped experience in here, and that's again by the 7th Gen 1, but definitely we have the ability of getting a full readout, which is a 64 megapixel camera shot straight from the main sensor on the back, and of course we have Pro Mode. You're able to use external microphones. There's a whole bunch of different things that we could do in there. And at the end of the day, if the price point was always holding you back from trying a clamshell device, I feel like at this price point, what Motorola is trying to do here is open up the market for people to start trying foldables at a more affordable price point with a more tailored experience around the 7th Gen 1. Hopefully the 2nd generation of this one will definitely give us even more features. So my hope is that you find something interesting with the Moto Razr 2023 that compels you to try a foldable device and of course see if this is something that will work for you. So at the end of the day, let me know in the comments below, what do you guys think of the brand new Razr 2023? And if you decide to pick it up, which color did you guys decide to go with? I went with the purple one because, again, this is one of the really cool features about here is that we get that nice vegan leather color that we have in there. A beautiful display on the outside, a gorgeous display on the inside that can go all the way up to 144 Hertz. I'll see you guys in the next video.